I had just moved to Arizona, trying to start over after a painful divorce. The desert air was dry, the skies too open, and the house felt far too big for one person. I didn't mind the silence until it began echoing back at me. A friend recommended someone to help around the property. He's young but mature. They said, that's how Liam came into my life. He was 17, sharp, quiet, polite. Not the kind of teenager who sulks or scrolls endlessly. He greeted me with a respectful nod and got to work like he had something to prove. Cleaning, sorting the backyard, fixing little things I hadn't noticed were broken. I watched from the kitchen window, coffee in hand, wondering why someone his age was working like a man twice his years. It didn't take long for us to start talking. Small things, at first weather music, then deeper conversations. One night, after I made too much pasta, I invited him to stay for dinner. He hesitated, then accepted with a shrug. That night he told me his mom left. When he was 10, his dad was around, but never really present. I listened more. Then I spoke his story. Mirrored mine, in strange ways. Abandonment wears the same face on different people. Days passed. Then weeks he became part of the rhythm of my home. I didn't realize how much I'd come to look forward to. His knock on the door each morning, he brought a calmness I hadn't known I was missing. Not joy, not excitement, just a quiet presence that made the place feel less empty. One afternoon, after finishing up in the garage, he leaned against the doorframe and said, "Are you really happy here?" Just like that. No context, no smile, just direct question that hit harder than I expected. I didn't answer. I couldn't, because I didn't know that question followed me the whole night. It made me see things differently. The empty rooms, the untouched books, the way I kept the lights on longer than I needed. I told myself not to get too close. He was a kid after all, but Liam didn't act like one. He cleaned up after himself. He spoke, like someone who'd seen too much too soon, and the way he looked at me, quiet, observant. It was like he could see through the walls I'd spent years building. I started leaving little things out for him, snacks, tools, books I thought might. Like he always noticed, I never meant to let someone in. Again, not like this, not so soon, but Liam wasn't asking for anything. He was just there, and maybe that's why it felt safe until that one evening when he asked me something I never saw coming. It started on a quiet evening, just as the sun dipped below the edge of the desert. Liam had stayed late, helping sort some old boxes I'd ignored. For years I offered him dinner again. Nothing special, just leftovers he accepted like always with that silent nod of his. We ate in the kitchen. No music, just the ticking clock, and then, out of nowhere, he said it. "I want to stay. Here, not just work here. I mean live here like family." I froze, fork halfway to my myth. It wasn't just the words, it was the way he said them. Like he practiced it 100 times in his head. And finally, let them out. At first, I didn't know if I heard him right when I asked him to repeat it. He didn't hesitate. "I want you to adopt me," he said quietly. "Or at least let me stay for good. I don't belong anywhere else." The weight of it hit hard. It wasn't romantic, not inappropriate, just desperate, a cry for stability from someone who'd never had. My mind scrambled to process what he was really asking. Was this about safety, love, escape? I looked at Liam, this teenager who kept his pain behind sharp eyes and quick movements. His hands were clenched on the table. His voice didn't shake, but I could feel the fear behind it. He wasn't testing me. He was putting his whole heart on the table, and what shook me more was my first instinct. I wanted to say yes, but I didn't. I told him I needed time, that something like this couldn't be decided over one dinner conversation. He didn't get upset. He just nodded, same as always, like he expected hesitation. But his shoulders dropped. He'd taken a risk, and I knew I'd pierced something that couldn't be unpierced. That night I couldn't sleep, I thought. About what it would mean, about my own walls, about how close I'd let him get. Without even noticing, I wasn't looking to replace anyone. I wasn't looking to be anyone's savior. But the truth was Liam had become more than a helping hand. He was a quiet presence in my life that had started filling in the cracks I didn't want to admit were there. I called a therapist. I'd stopped seeing months ago. I told her everything she didn't judge, just asked, "Are you sure you're seeing him for who he is, not for what you're missing?" That hit deep when I saw Liam. The next day, I didn't avoid the topic. I told him I didn't know what the right answer was, but I also told him I cared, that he mattered, that I'd never let him feel alone while he was in my home. His eyes didn't light up, but they softened, and I knew then we had crossed a line. We weren't just worker and employer anymore. We were something else entirely. Something fragile. Something real. Things started changing after that night, not immediately but slowly. Like a door creaking shut 1 inch at a time, Liam stopped talking as much. The silence between us wasn't the peaceful kind anymore. It felt loaded, tense. He still showed up, still did what I asked, but there was a distance now, like he was holding something back. Or worse, hiding something. At first, I brushed it off. Maybe I'd pushed him away with my hesitation. Maybe he felt rejected. It tried to keep things normal, kept our routine going, thinking it would pass. But then I started noticing things. My wallet had a few bills missing, tools weren't where I left them. One afternoon, I walked past the guest room and saw him snap his phone shut the second I came close. Something wasn't right. Then came the night everything broke. I got home early and found Liam in the garage with 3 older teens I'd never seen before. Loud music, empty bottles, the air thick, with something that didn't belong. They scattered the second they saw me, but Liam didn't move. He stood there defiant, waiting for me to say something. "What is this?" I asked. He didn't answer, just stared at me like I crossed a line by even asking, "You let me in, then push me out." He finally said, "You act like you care, but only when it fits your schedule." And I was stunned he didn't raise his voice, but his words were razor sharp. He accused me of using him to fix my own loneliness. Said I made him feel wanted, only to remind him he didn't really belong. I tried to explain that I was trying to figure it all out, that I never meant to hurt him. But he wasn't hearing. His anger wasn't about the party. It ran deeper. This wasn't about one night. It was about all the nights before. About the confusion we both let grow. Without naming it, "You made me feel like I had a place." He said then, "You reminded me I was just passing through." It felt like being punched in the chest. Because in some ways he was right. I told him he needed to leave for now, that he could stay with the family friend who had introduced us. I couldn't let this keep spiraling. It wasn't safe for either of us. He didn't argue. He just grabbed his bag and walked out after the door shut. The silence came back, but it wasn't the kind I'd grown us to. This one hurt. This one echoed every word he'd said. I sat there thinking how easily care can turn into confusion, how quickly trust can snap when emotions get tangled. I didn't know if I'd see him again, but I knew one thing for sure. Whatever we'd had, whatever it was broken now, and maybe it had been built on crack's web. Oth chose not to see. Weeks turned into months, and the house was quiet again. Not peaceful, just empty. The kind of quiet that makes you question everything. It tried to move on, kept my routine filled. My time with tasks, errands, anything that would keep my mind off Liam, but no matter what I did, I kept coming back to the way he looked at me that night, like I'd let him down in a way he'd seen. Before, I didn't try to contact him. I figured he needed space as much as I did. Still, I thought about him, often not in a regretful way, more like trying to understand what it had all meant. I realized we both walked into something we didn't fully understand. I saw parts of myself in him, my younger self, desperate for connection, for safety, for someone to just Stay. Then one morning a letter arrived. No return address, just my name in tight, careful handwriting. It was from Liam. He wrote that he was sorry. Said he didn't know how to handle everything he was feeling. And he knew. He'd crossed lines. He said he didn't blame me for anything, but what stuck with me most was this line: I just wanted to feel like I was enough for someone to stay. That sentence sat in my chest for days. I read it over and over, letting it break me in the quietest way I wrote. Back told him he had always been enough, but that I wasn't the person to give him what he needed, not then, not in the way he deserved. I told him I forgave him, and I hoped he forgave me too. He didn't write back, but a few weeks later I heard, through our mutual connection, that he'd started classes at a local community college. He had a part-time job at a bookstore and was doing okay. That was enough for me. It meant he was trying it. Meant he hadn't let the past hold him down. I started therapy again. Committed. This time I unpacked all the pieces I kept boxed up: my guilt, my loneliness, barrels I tried to fill without understanding what I was offering or what I was taking, and somewhere along the way, I began to feel lighter. Not healed, not whole, but more honest with myself eventually. I met someone new. Not a whirlwind romance. Not some dramatic rescue from solitude. Just someone kind, steady. Someone who asked questions and actually waited for the answers. It was slow, and it was real. I still think about Liam, not with sadness, but with clarity. We were two broken people who found each other in the wrong way at the wrong time, hoping to fix wounds too deep to name. I don't know what he remembers about me, but I remember that moment when I realized loving someone isn't always enough sometimes. The kindest thing you can do is let go before you damage what's left. And sometimes the people who shake us the most don't stay in our lives. They just leave behind the lesson we never knew we needed.